seemed like a digital apocalypse had happened today. Laptops suddenly went kaput, bank operations were hit, flights across the world were cancelled, media channels went off-air, supermarkets couldn't function, healthcare services were hit. As soon as the Microsoft CrowdStrike outage happened, most of the world came to a standstill. In fact, as we speak, work is still underway to fix what CrowdStrike CEO Kurtz called a defect found in the single content update for Windows. He's also stated that this is not a security incident or a cyber attack. Before we talk more about the larger implications of this entire ordeal that the world faced today, take a look at this report.
Joining us here this morning,
it was just another day at the Mirror Now headquarters. Our team, dedicated as always to bringing you the news that matters, was ready and deployed in action. A little after 10 in the morning, we started noticing something to be amiss. One by one, all the laptops and desktops started rebooting in recovery mode, all showing this blue error screen. We thought it was a systems failure at the workplace. Little did we know that we had stumbled upon the biggest news story the tech world had ever seen. The blue screen of death you see on the screen, many Windows users across the globe are experiencing the blue screen of death errors following a recent CrowdStrike update. So what exactly was this blue screen of death? Microsoft put it down to a problem with the recent update of one of its antivirus partners, CrowdStrike. Essentially, the preliminary root cause was a configuration change in a portion of its Azure backend workloads. It caused interruption between storage and compute resources, which resulted in connectivity failures that affected downstream Microsoft 365 services that were dependent on these connections. Now, all of this went above most users' heads. But the bottom line was this: if you used any Apple, Google, or Linux-based operating system, you were safe. But if you used a Microsoft-based OS, especially a Windows with CrowdStrike, then you were looking at the blue screen of death. The problem is, most of your world uses Windows. Your office, your bank, and most importantly, all your airlines. Before long, every airport in India had long queues at entrances and at check-in counters. With their office applications failing, airports had no choice but to delay flights while they manually wrote out boarding passes. As India was grounded, the IT minister issued a statement saying that the union government was in touch with Microsoft and insisted that the NIC was not compromised. His predecessor was a lot more scathing.
There are very significant and serious questions that will be posed to Microsoft and every other platform like this about resilience, about redundancy, about fail-proofness, what caused it, and what is the reason, what are the steps they will take to make sure it never happens again. So there is certainly, this is a very, very unprecedented event. It's a black swan event in the area of technology.
While Microsoft and CrowdStrike managed to get its act together, IT gurus eventually figured out a solution on fixing the blue screen. Slowly but surely, India is getting back on its feet. But this black swan event has left us with more questions than answers. Shreya Upadhyaya for Mirror Now.
All right, let's get a perspective on what exactly happened today and the wider implications of this entire massive outage. On the broadcast, I'm joined by Pavan Duggal. He's a cybersecurity expert. I'm also joined by Arun Mamgai, cybersecurity and international data science specialist. He's joining us from the United States. Arun, let me start with you first. As far as CrowdStrike is concerned, they've said that this is not a cybersecurity attack and that all of their customers, all of their clients are secure. What's the situation, if I can understand from you, first of all? Where have they reached as far as recovery of systems, fixing the defect is concerned?
Having me, and we are gathering the information as this entire episode is exploding. So far, based on the details that have been shared, yes, it does not look like to be a cybersecurity attack. They recently, the root cause that has been announced in the public they recently upgraded, and one of the sensor for the Falcon is their tool that is being used to secure the endpoint devices, including the Windows laptop, like a laptop that you currently have. I don't know whether it's a Windows laptop or not, but that is used to secure the Windows devices. And because of the upgrade into the Falcon, some of the users have to face the blue screen of death. But so it was entirely because of the upgrade in their Falcon sensor, not because of the cyber attack, based on the issue that has been, or the resolution that has been announced from their side. There is a manual process where you all, or the administrators, have to manually start the Windows machine in a safe mode and delete one special file from the CrowdStrike. But it's a manual resolution, so there is no automated fix at this point of time.
So basically, this is just a temporary fix that the CrowdStrike has done right now. A permanent solution to this entire saga still is awaited. But let me take this across to Pavan Duggal. Pavan Duggal, one of the first things that came to my mind when all of these developments were taking place and this massive outage hit the world was, this is what happens when one company has a monopoly over one sector. In this case, it's the tech sector. And it's not new that Microsoft has been accused of monopoly. But as users, as consumers of tech, should we now be more thoughtful about how there should be more than one company in one sector which has a hold on stuff?
Clearly, we have to realize that we cannot afford to keep all our eggs in one basket. And if we are going to keep that in an interconnected world, the reality of these kinds of vulnerabilities and global kinds of outages are going to stare us right in our face. The fact is that we'll have to go for appropriate disaster recovery management, appropriate steps. Why? Because you have to quickly realize that you cannot afford to be completely reliant on a particular technology or on a particular user of a particular service provider. Why? Because if that service provider goes kaput or its services are impacted, it could impact your entire digital operations, your digital business. Today, it's not just only about a small technical glitch in the updation of a software. It's an episode that's cost the world billions of dollars. The amount of losses that have been incurred globally have still not been calculated or estimated. But clearly, in a world when a company cannot afford to be 5 minutes down time in terms of downtime, we've now seen a couple of hours of complete outages at a global level. And when your flights start getting impacted, when your hospitals start getting impacted, it's no longer just a technical glitch issue. It's an issue that impacts the sovereignty, security, and integrity of a sovereign country. It's an issue that impacts the cyber sovereign interests of a particular country. And therefore, I think the time is clear that the world will have to go for a very thorough investigation as to what this has happened, rather than taking the statement of the company concerned on its face value. The time has come where the world has to now have a fresh relook on what should it be its approaches on cybersecurity. This is also the time when, once internet has made geography history, these kind of global outages are incapable of being dealt with by national cybersecurity laws. This is the time where the Committee of Nations have to come together and say, hey guys, let's now come up with some kind of an international treaty to deal with these kind of global outages and appropriate responsibility. It's also the time where nation states need to demand far more transparency, accountability and responsibility from various stakeholders. Any company does a lot of beta testing before it offers
absolutely.
its
Pavan Duggal,
updates
can I just
to
understand
its
from
users.
you,
But when you're talking of a big company.
Yeah. When you say, Pavan Duggal, that we should look into this beyond what the company is stating, are you saying that we still cannot rule out the fact that there could have been a security breach?
Absolutely. This is a classical case of a security breach, cyber security breach. Much that the company is saying it's not happening, it does not cutting any ice. Further, this is a kind of an episode where you could even see traces of existence of elements of cyber terror. In a typical cyber terror attack, what do? You basically try to disseminate terror in the minds and the hearts of the targeted community. This is exactly what happened today. Now, clearly saying that it was just a technical glitch is no longer going to really be holding much ice, primarily when these issues are cropping up. Countries need to look at it. Is it just a mere cybersecurity breach? Does it have cyber terror connections? And if so, who are the relevant cyber actors? If it is originated from the dark net, how do you attribute it to the dark net? Further, what can countries do in order to protect their cyber security postures? What further they need to do so as to put in place appropriate cyber resilience mechanisms and frameworks? This is most important because these kinds of episodes, while this is the first of its kind in the world, it's definitely not going to be the last. We are now already entering into the new cyber world order, where these increasing cyber security breaches and cyber crimes are going to be the daily new phenomenon, the new normal. And therefore, countries and their respective stakeholders need to have a more holistic, fresh, flexible approach on both cyber security and also on cyber resilience.
You know what's also interesting, Pavan Duggal and Arun Mamga, is the fact that CrowdStrike has also been the company that investigated the 2016 US presidential election, where they were alleging a nexus between Donald Trump and Russia. So that sort of conspiracy theory has also been attached to CrowdStrike. But beyond that, Arun Mamgai, what Pavan Duggal was saying, the fact that cyber attacks and security breaches are related to the geopolitical situations of our times and can have such angles and such factors influencing this, and the fact that the cyberspace is the new space for war. We've seen perhaps smaller examples earlier, but this time around it's perhaps one of the biggest IT outages that we've seen.
No, absolutely. And while, we cannot rule out all the possibilities, I think the fine prints in this scenario is slightly different. And as I mentioned earlier, the resolution is already out, and things are getting back into the regular fashion. But I absolutely agree with Mr. Pawan. I think what's really happening in today's world, almost everyone is adopting technology. As a matter of fact, all the organizations now says we are a technology company, even though they could be airline, they could be retailers, and they're adopting technology not just for small sections of their operations, but which can highly impact their end customers. And data is new oil. There is data that is being generated. And these technology glitch, and there are different technology elements, we call it Internet of Things, where different components of devices are connecting together to deliver a service to the customer, like an airline. Airline is combining Microsoft, CrowdStrike, AWS, Azure, and deliver a service to the end customer. Even if one of the component is broken, the entire software supply chain will be hugely impacted. So how do you provide governance processes to ensure, these kind of things don't happen? And I think some kind of a guidelines, processes must be enforced.
Okay. Pavan Duggal, on the one hand, we're talking about the fourth industrial revolution and how this is the digital era and all of that. On the other hand, you have such massive outages taking place across the world. The company says this was an update defect. And even if we go by that, the fact of the matter is that the world came to a standstill today. And my question is it then a good idea to emphasize and be overly dependent on tech and AI right now, where we don't have the necessary guidelines and security apparatus in place?
Well, one thing is very clear. We cannot run away to Mount Everest and forget this digital ecosystem. We have to live in this world, and living without technology and the digital bandwagon is just not going to be possible. But yes, we can go and have a new, fresh look. Yeah. It's time to ensure that we don't put all our eggs in one basket. We go for different technologies so that in the event one technological basket stops functioning, the others take over. Therefore, dependent exclusively on one particular technology or the services of one monopolistic player does not necessarily appear to be the right answer. Further, I think countries now need to take a lesson out of this, that their dependence on a particular monopolistic player could impact their sovereignty, security, integrity, could even harm their national interests. And therefore, a new debate has started that why should not countries be looking at self-reliance? Already India is leading in this direction. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Atmanirbhar Bharat is an example in this particular regard, where we are trying to be more self-sufficient. So if we can start developing more indigenous technologies
in fact,
that can help us.
India has also responded to United States in a different context regarding our strategic autonomy, but perhaps that can be applied to the tech sector as well, where it's definitely needed, and that is the need of the hour.
Surely, and that's the reason why I think if you're going to look at issues like indigenous development of technology, issues like data localization, and issues like primarily placing your national interest on top of other elements, I think that will be a good step forward for countries to make secure their cyber sovereign interests. But at the same time, you have to be also mindful of these facts that these global players and monopolies will keep on existing. But yes, if you can have in place appropriate national cyber security laws, if you can have effective national cyber resilience frameworks so that stakeholders are informed of what they have to do should such an attack take place, if you can do an appropriate capacity building and awareness amongst various stakeholders about these kinds of nuances, then to a large extent you can make your population and your stakeholders more prepared to deal with these kinds of scenarios as they emerge with much increasing frequency in the coming times.
Okay. My last question to you, Arun Mamgai, when you have nations now talking more about how national security and national cyber security guidelines have to be put in place, where you have the world thinking about this at an individual level, what is the concept of privacy that is left? What is the concept of safe cyberspace that is left when you do know that at any moment there can be any cybersecurity breach?
I lost you. Can you repeat your questions? I think there is some network problem.
Now, if you're able to hear me, Arun, I was talking about how, when nations across the world are talking about having a cybersecurity law, then does a concept like privacy still exist when we know that any moment there can be a cybersecurity breach, perhaps over my phone that I have here, over, any of our gadgets that we use every day?
No, absolutely. And that's a great question to ask. I will give me a few minutes to answer this question. Absolutely, that's a reality that privacy can be breached. But on the other side, the governance policies becomes extremely important. What that really means is we need to understand what kind of a data that is being stored, that is being tracked by either devices, by the vendors, by the providers, and what's the criticality of the data. That's also very important. Somebody just, if it's more around the PI, the personal informations, my credit card informations, or my family information, and how are they tracking the data? How are they storing the data? So in order to, so first is, in order to assess the challenge, if you don't know what the challenges are, what the risks are, we can never come up with the relevant privacies and the governance framework. So we should never ignore that privacy is not realistic. It's but then in order to build that, there should absolutely be a privacy framework. As a matter of fact, last year, the Digital Prevention Data Privacy Act that was introduced, that was an act in the right direction. And I commend the government to, to come up with it. So absolutely, it's a right step in the, right direction.
All right, we'll leave it there. Arun Mamgai and Pavan Duggal, thank you very much to both of you gentlemen for joining us tonight and sharing your perspectives and the way forward after this massive outage that gripped the world today. Thank you very much to both of you.